Ramadan is a month of fasting and prayer. It brings us closer to Allah and each other. It brings us closer to Allah and each other.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen. Amma ba'd, fa'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Rasulallah. Wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah. As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Nabiyallah. Wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Nurallah. And the Prophet of mankind, the peace of our heart and mind, the most generous and kind, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, has stated, whoever recites salat upon me one time, Allah Azza wa Jal sends 10 mercies upon him. And whoever recites upon me 10 times, Allah Azza wa Jal sends 100 blessings upon him. And whoever recites salat upon me 100 times, Allah Azza wa Jal will write between both of his eyes that he is free from hypocrisy and the hellfire. And Allah Azza wa Jal will keep him with the martyrs on the day of judgment. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah Azza wa Jal, my dear viewers, in this beautiful silsila of the blessings of Ramadan. Alhamdulillah Azza wa Jal, in the last episode, I discussed about the Madani parables regarding the masjid. And Alhamdulillah Azza wa Jal, in this episode, I shall discuss about the rulings of i'tikaf. My dear viewers, if a mu'takif enters the Finai masjid, his i'tikaf will not become invalid. A mu'takif can enter Finai masjid even unnecessarily. The Finai masjid includes the areas within the boundary of the masjid that are used for the needs of the masjid, such as the minaret, wudu areas, toilets, bathrooms, any madrasa that is adjacent to the masjid, rooms for the imam and muaddin, place for shoes, etc. In some cases, rulings of the masjid are applied in these areas, whereas they are regarded out of the masjid in some other cases. For example, a junubi, the one who must take a ritual bath, can enter these areas. Similarly, a mu'takif can also enter these areas even unnecessarily. It will be as if he has stepped into another part of the actual masjid. Sadur Sharia, Sheikh Maulana Amjad Ali Azami, alayhi rahmatullah al-Qawi, the author of Bahari Shariat, has stated to go to Finai Masjid, which is the area outside the masjid but is adjacent to it and used for the need of the masjid, such as the place where shoes are taken off, bathrooms, etc., will not invalidate the i'tikaf. He rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi has further stated, in this case, Finai Masjid is considered a part of the masjid. The minaret is also included in Finai Masjid. If the path leading to the minaret is within the masjid, a mu'takif can enter it whenever he wishes. But if the path is outside the masjid, then he can only use it for the adhan, because calling the adhan is a shari'i necessity. Ala Hazrat rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi has stated, if the madaris are within the masjid boundaries and there isn't any path separating them from the masjid, there is only a wall marking the division between them. Walking into them will not amount to walking outside the masjid in this case. A mu'takif can enter these places. It is like any other part of the masjid. As the yard is a part of the masjid and a mu'takif is allowed to walk and sit around the yard, he can also walk on the roof of the masjid, provided that the way of the roof is inside the masjid. However, if the steps of the roof are outside the masjid, then the mu'takif isn't allowed to go on the roof. If he does, his i'tikaf will become invalid. It should also be remembered that it is makruh for everyone, whether mu'takif or not, to go to the roof of the masjid needlessly, as this is a sign of desecration. Mu'takif can exit the masjid boundaries during i'tikaf due to the two reasons. Number 1, shari'i needs, and number 2, physical needs. Let's look into detail with shari'i needs. A shari'i need refers to the need of exiting the masjid in order to fulfill such a commandment or act, declared obligatory by Sharia, which cannot be fulfilled by the mu'takif staying in the i'tikaf area. These include the Salatul Jumu'ah and the Adhan, etc. Let's look at a few points regarding Shar'i needs. Number 1. Even if the path leading to the minaret is outside the masjid boundaries, the mu'takif can walk to the minaret in order to call the adhan, as this is a Shar'i need. Number 2. If the Salatul Jumu'ah is not offered in the masjid, where one is performing i'tikaf, it is permissible for him to leave the masjid to offer the Salatul Jumu'ah in such a masjid where Salatul Jumu'ah is offered. The mu'takif should leave his i'tikaf area at such an appropriate time that he could get to the Jami' Masjid and offer 4 rak'at Sunnah before the sermon starts. He can stay after Salatul Jumu'ah for as long as 4 or 6 rak'at are offered. If he stays later than this or completes the rest of the i'tikaf in that masjid, though his i'tikaf will not become invalid, remaining in that masjid after Salatul Jumu'ah longer than the amount of time in which 6 rak'at are offered is makruh. Number 3. If one performs i'tikaf in such a local masjid where the Jamaat isn't held, he cannot leave the masjid for Jamaat because it is better for him to offer Salah without a Jamaat in that masjid. Now let's look at physical needs in detail. Physical needs include the necessities which are unavoidable, such as defecation, urination, etc. Now let's look at some points in regards to physical needs. Number 1. If there is no particular place to relieve oneself within the masjid boundaries, the mu'takif can exit the masjid for this purpose. Number 2. If there is no wudu area or pond inside the masjid, and it is also impossible to do wudu using a tub, etc., inside the masjid without letting drops of water fall onto the actual masjid floor, one can go outside to do wudu. Number 3. In case of nocturnal emission, if there is neither a bathroom in the masjid boundaries nor doing ghusl is possible in the masjid in any other way, the mu'takif can go out of the masjid to do ritual ghusl. Number 4. If the mu'takif goes home to relieve himself, he has to return immediately after defecation. He is not allowed to stay there. If his house is far from the masjid and his friend's house is near, it is not necessary for him to go to his friend's house to relieve himself. He can go to his own house. If he has 2 houses, one of which is near, he has to go to the near one. Some of the respected scholars, rahimahumullah ta'ala, have said that going to the home that is further away will invalidate the i'tikaf. Number 5. There are usually toilets, bathrooms and wudu areas within the masjid, boundaries to facilitate the people who come to offer salah. Therefore, the mu'takif should use them. Number 6. In some masajid, the path leading to the toilet, bathroom, etc. is outside the masjid boundaries, so the mu'takif cannot go to these toilets, bathrooms, etc. without a physical need. Now let's look at the acts that invalidate i'tikaf. The acts which invalidate i'tikaf are being described. In the following account, the invalidation of i'tikaf as a result of going out of the masjid refers to going out of the masjid boundaries completely. The mother of the believers, Sayyidatuna Aisha Siddiqa radiyallahu ta'ala anha, has narrated that a mu'takif should neither visit a sick person, nor attend a funeral, nor touch a woman, nor have intercourse with her, nor exit the masjid for any need except for the ones that are unavoidable. Now let's look at some points about the acts that invalidate i'tikaf. Number 1. To go out of the masjid boundaries even for a single moment for any reason other than the foregoing necessities will invalidate i'tikaf. Number 2. Remember, to go out of the masjid means stepping out in such a manner that is usually considered stepping out of the masjid. Sticking only head out of the masjid will not invalidate i'tikaf. Number 3. To go out of the masjid without a shar'i need will invalidate i'tikaf, regardless of whether it was deliberate, unintentional, or by mistake. However, if it was unintentional or by mistake, it will not be a sin. Number 4. If a mu'takif goes out of the masjid boundaries for a shar'i need and stays out for even a single moment after the fulfillment of his need, i'tikaf will become invalid. Number 5. As fasting is a condition for i'tikaf, breaking of fast will automatically invalidate the i'tikaf, regardless of whether or not there was a valid exemption for invalidating the fast and whether it was broken deliberately or mistakenly. In all these cases, the i'tikaf will become invalid. Breaking the fast by mistake implies, though one was aware that he was fasting, he happened to do such an unintentional act that negates the fast. For example, eating after dawn, subh sadiq, or breaking the fast before sunset due to the premature uttering of adhan or wailing of siren. The fast will become invalid in both these cases. Similarly, if water goes down the throat unintentionally while rinsing the mouth despite being aware that one was fasting, both the fast and the i'tikaf will become invalid. Number 6. If the mu'takif ate or drank something whilst he had forgotten the fast, neither his fast nor his i'tikaf will become invalid in this case. Number 7. Mu'takif Islamic brothers and sisters should remember the basic principle that all such acts that invalidate the fast invalidate the i'tikaf as well. Number 8. If the mu'takif exits the masjid boundaries to relieve himself and his creditor stops him, his i'tikaf will become invalid. If a mu'takif becomes unconscious or insane and his unconsciousness or insanity prolongs to the extent that he is unable to carry out his fast, his i'tikaf will become invalid and it will be wajib for him to make up for it, even if he regains his health several years later. A mu'takif can eat and drink inside the masjid only. If he goes out of the masjid for this purpose, his i'tikaf will become invalid. While eating inside the masjid, a mu'takif should take care not to dirty the masjid floor, etc. If there is no one to bring the mu'takif food, he can exit the masjid to bring food, but he has to still eat the food in the masjid. To go out of the masjid for the treatment of an illness will invalidate i'tikaf. If the mu'takif suffering the disease of sleepwalks outside the masjid, his i'tikaf will become invalid. The Prophet of mankind, the peace of our heart and mind, the most generous and kind, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, prohibited sawmul wisal and sawmul sukut, which imply fasting constantly without doing sahri and iftar and constant silence during fast respectively. There is a general misconception amongst people that a mu'takif should seclude himself inside the curtain in the masjid and remain completely silent. In fact, this isn't correct. One should use curtains as it is sunnah to perform i'tikaf in a tent. It increases concentration as well, but there is no harm in doing i'tikaf without a curtain. The respected scholars, rahimahumullah ta'ala, have said remaining silent during i'tikaf and believing that it is a form of worship is makruh tahrimi. But if somebody stays silent, not considering it as a good deed, it does no harm. Remaining silent to avoid indecent speech is excellent, because avoiding such speech is wajib and indulging in it is a sin. Any speech that is mubah, in other words, neither good nor bad, is also makruh for a mu'takif. However, if necessary, it is permissible. Unnecessary mubah speech inside the masjid ruins good deeds as fire ruins wood. Misusing eyes, suspicion, insulting someone without a valid reason, lying, backbiting, telling tales, jealousy, laying a false blame, mocking or hurting someone, impolite speech, listening to music, abusing, unfair quarreling, shaving beard or trimming it less than a fist length are all already sins. They will become even more severe sins in a masjid in the state of i'tikaf. Repent of these sins sincerely and give them up for good. Let's look at some other permissible cases for invalidating i'tikaf. In all of the following cases, i'tikaf will become invalid and one will have to make up for it later, but invalidation will not be a sin. Number 1. During i'tikaf, if a mu'takif suffers from such an illness that cannot be treated within the masjid, he is allowed to break the i'tikaf. Number 2. If a person is drowning or burning in the fire, the mu'takif should go out of the masjid, invalidating i'tikaf, to rescue him. Number 3. If a funeral, a dead body arrives and there is no one to offer the funeral salah, The mu'takif can break i'tikaf in this case in order to offer it, exiting the masjid boundaries. The mu'takif can break the i'tikaf to offer the funeral salah of a mahram or his wife, but it will be wajib for him to make up for it. If the mu'takif is a witness in a judicial case and the decision depends on his evidence, it is permissible for him to break i'tikaf in order to give evidence and prevent the rights of an individual from being violated. I pray to Allah Azza wa Jal that He gives us all the ability that we are able to do i'tikaf every Ramadan and whenever it's possible. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us all the ability that we're able to acquire the knowledge about i'tikaf and all the things in Ramadan. Ameen. Bijahi Nabil Ameen. Sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Sallu ala al-Habib. Sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad. Sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam.
Ramadan is a month of fasting and prayer. It brings us closer to Allah and each other. It brings us closer to Allah and each other.